My mother betrayed me with a secret 7-year affair with my high school bully's dad. Now I've exposed them and taken my revenge. I, a 23-year-old male, need to get this off my chest. It's going to be long, so buckle up and grab some snacks. A note before we get started: I changed the names for obvious reasons. My dad died when I was 12, and it was just my mom raising me after that. We weren't broke enough to qualify for free lunch, but we definitely couldn't afford anything beyond the basics. I was always the tallest kid in my class and skinny as hell, which made me the #1 target for bullies. Everyone called me stick and skeleton, which I tried to brush off, but middle school was just the warm-up. High school? That's when the real nightmare started. There was this guy, Jacob, who decided I was going to be his personal punching bag for 4 years. And I'm not talking about your typical shoving in hallways. This dude was methodical about it. Like this one time, I spent 3 weeks on this history project about World War II, made this detailed diorama of the D-Day landing with little soldiers I painted myself and everything. Got to school early to set it up. And Jacob accidentally spilled his drink all over it 5 minutes before the teacher showed up. When I told my mom, she just shrugged and said maybe I should have protected my work better, like it was my fault. The cafeteria was basically a war zone. Jacob and his crew would sit at the table next to mine, making comments about literally everything, from my clothes to what I was eating. Hey, look, Stick's wearing the same shirt again. Think his mom shops at the dumpster behind Walmart? If I brought lunch from home, they'd make comments about the reused containers. If I bought school lunch, they'd make gagging sounds like my food was contaminated. Eventually my appetite was gone, and I stopped bringing food with me. Computer lab was where Jacob really shined, though. He'd wait until I'd nearly finished an assignment, then trip the power strip when the teacher wasn't looking. Hours of work gone in seconds. After the 3rd time it happened, I finally reported him. You know what the school did? Made us work it out. Which meant Jacob apologizing with this fake smile, then catching me in the parking lot later to remind me what happens to snitches. Came home with a bruised rib that day, told my mom I fell on the stairs. At some point, I tried fighting back. Jacob was messing with my backpack, and I shoved him away. He stumbled back, crashed into a desk and got a bloody nose. Nothing major, but you'd think I tried to murder him. Guess who got suspended for 2 weeks? Me. Violence is never the answer, my mom lectured while making me apologize to Jacob and his dad, who showed up looking all concerned in his fancy suit. That's when I first met Dr. Miller. Didn't know he'd become the center of this whole mess later. The worst part? When I kept telling my mom how bad things were getting, she'd shut me down every time. We can't afford to make enemies, she'd say. Just keep your head down and focus on your studies. She made me promise not to report anything, claiming she was too busy with work to deal with parent meetings. Every time I brought it up, she'd make me feel guilty about adding to her stress, or we don't want any problems. So, eventually I just stopped telling her. She worked as a receptionist at the local medical center, and I believed we were barely staying afloat. Dad's life insurance had mostly gone to paying off the house, and what was left was in a college fund I couldn't touch. Mom was always talking about how tight money was, how we had to be careful with every dollar. I'd see her at the kitchen table with bills spread out, sighing about how difficult it was. So, I wore the same 3 pairs of jeans until they had holes in them, never asked for new shoes until the old ones had the soles coming off, never signed up for field trips, or asked for money for yearbooks or school events. I didn't want to be a burden on my mom. I tried to keep my grades up despite everything. School was my ticket out of this town, and I knew it. But it's hard to focus on algebra when you're constantly looking over your shoulder, hard to care about Shakespeare when you're worried about what humiliation is waiting for you in the hallway. My grades were decent but not great, just enough to keep me on track for escaping after graduation. Every day at school felt like walking into enemy territory with no backup. I developed this constant knot in my stomach that never really went away. Started having trouble sleeping because I'd be thinking about what Jacob might do the next day. Started mapping out hallways with the least amount of traffic so I could get from class to class with minimal exposure. Junior year is when Jacob leveled up from amateur bully to psychological warfare specialist. He figured out every way to mess with me while keeping his own record squeaky clean. The worst was when someone leaked my private messages to this girl I liked from my math class. I'd finally worked up the courage to DM her after we got paired on a project. Nothing crazy, just awkward attempts at flirting from a guy who had 0 experience with girls. Next thing I know, screenshots are plastered all over the school's social media groups. My messages became literal memes. "You have really nice eyes, and I liked that thing you said in class today," turned into school-wide jokes. People would repeat my messages in exaggerated voices when I walked by. I never could prove it was Jacob, but the screenshots came from his best friend's account, and Jacob was the first one to share them with a caption like, "Ladies, form an orderly line for Stick's smooth moves." My grades started tanking in group projects too. I'd do my part, but somehow my contributions would get lost or corrupted before the final submission. When I worked alone, I did fine, BS and occasional As, but every partner assignment became a disaster because no one wanted to work with the target. There was only one guy, named Danny, who eventually got along with me when the teacher put us in a group. We weren't close friends exactly, but dude never took the bullying BS or made fun of me. We had mutual respect, had each other's contacts, and we would have food together sometimes in the lunch break. Maybe he couldn't stop Jacob, but at least I felt less lonely. In PE, things got physical. We were playing floor hockey, and Jacob accidentally high-sticked me in the face, split my lip open. The coach just handed me a towel and told me to sit out. No penalty for Jacob, not even a warning. God, it was like this bastard was never held accountable for his actions, only because he came from a rich family, and that hurt me even more because I knew he could get away with whatever he does. Danny walked me home that day, so when I got home with my swollen face, my mom just told me to put some ice on it and be more careful next time. My physics teacher was the only teacher who actually saw through Jacob's BS. He caught Jacob switching the labels on our lab materials, which would have caused my experiment to fail spectacularly and possibly dangerously. Instead of making a scene, he quietly gave me a separate lab station and started letting me turn in assignments directly to him. "Some people only feel tall when they're standing on someone else," he told me once after class. "Your job isn't to be their stepping stool." It was the first time an adult had acknowledged what was happening without making me feel like I was the problem. I started spending lunch periods in his classroom, helping clean equipment in exchange for a safe place to eat. Senior year brought college applications and the light at the end of the tunnel. I applied to schools at least 3 states away, didn't even consider anything local. My grades weren't spectacular, but my SAT scores were decent. I got accepted to a state university 3 states away with a partial scholarship, not my first choice, but far enough that no one from my high school would be there. My dad had left a small college fund that would cover most of the remaining costs. It felt like I'd been handed a get-out-of-jail-free card. Graduation day, I didn't even stick around for the ceremony, just took the required photos for my mom, then bounced. No graduation parties, no signing yearbooks, none of that crap. I spent my last summer working at a warehouse on the edge of town, saving up every penny for college. The day I left was the first time I felt like I could breathe in years. Packed everything into my crappy car and drove 8 hours without stopping, kept checking the rearview mirror like Jacob and his crew might be following me. But with every mile marker, that fear faded a little more. College was different right from the start. People were focused on their own stuff, classes, relationships, jobs. Nobody had the time or energy to dedicate to making someone else's life miserable. I kept to myself at first, suspicious of anyone who tried to be friendly, had this constant feeling that it was all a setup, that they were laughing behind my back. But slowly I started to realize that wasn't the case. My roommate Mike was the first friend I made. He didn't care about my looks, or that I wore the same shirts all the time. We started hanging out, then gaming together, then grabbing meals. I still kept my personal stuff out of our friendship. I got a part-time job at a campus tech repair shop, which helped with spending money and gave me some practical skills. Made a few more friends through Mike and my classes, started going to the gym. With my neighbor down the hall, putting some muscle on my skinny frame. My life was improving and it felt damn good. I was finally healing. I'd visit home during major holidays, but those visits got shorter every time. Just driving past my old high school would make my hands shake. I started making excuses to skip hometown visits, telling my mom I had work or study groups. She didn't push too hard, just made the occasional guilt trip comment about being lonely. I'd feel bad for about 5 minutes, then remember how she'd ignored everything I went through, and the guilt would evaporate. By my junior year of college, I was barely recognizable as the scared kid who'd left town 2 years earlier. I had friends, decent grades, a job, and plans for the future. Even my appearance changed. I wasn't that skinny kid everyone made fun of. I thought I'd left all that high school drama behind me for good, but life has a way of circling back around when you least expect it. Senior year of college flew by. I landed an IT internship that turned into a job offer for after graduation, found an affordable apartment with Mike and another friend, and was finally starting to feel like a normal human being. I had my own little bubble of safety that I'd created 300 miles away from my hometown. My mom and I talked maybe once a week, short conversations about nothing important. I'd tell her about classes or work. She'd talk about neighbors or some TV show she was watching, surface-level stuff. I rarely asked about hometown gossip, and she rarely offered it. I'd visit for Thanksgiving or Christmas, staying for the absolute minimum time I could get away, with 2 nights max, always with the excuse of needing to get back for work or projects. My mom would fake some sad faces but then act normal. I thought it was because she understood I had my own life now. Turns out, she had her own reasons for not wanting me around too much. When I graduated, I started my full-time job, and life settled into a comfortable routine. I wasn't making huge money, but enough to afford my share of the apartment, keep my car running, and occasionally hang out with friends. For the first time since my dad died, I felt stable. But then came the thing that destroyed every bit of stability I had. Last December, my mom called with what she claimed was big news. Her voice had this weird, excited tone I hadn't heard in years. She wanted me to come home for Christmas because she had someone special for me to meet, told me she'd been seeing someone for a few months and wanted me to meet him and his kids, said it was serious and she wanted my blessing. I was genuinely happy for her, for real. She'd been alone since my dad died, and I figured she deserved some happiness. She'd worked hard raising me alone, and now that I was off doing my own thing, it made sense she'd want companionship. I immediately said yes to coming home for Christmas, even requested a few extra days off work so I could stay longer than my usual in-and-out visit. I even bought some gifts, wrapped everything properly with gift bags and tissue paper. During the drive home, I kept thinking about how this might actually be good. Maybe having a guy around would take some pressure off our relationship. Maybe his kids would become like the siblings I never had. I had all these Norman Rockwell images in my head about big family Christmases and cookouts. I arrived home on December 23rd. The house looked different, cleaner, with new furniture and decorations I didn't recognize. The whole place smelled like expensive candles instead of the Glade plug-ins my mom used to buy. My mom hugged me tight when I came in, looking happier than I'd seen her in years. She was wearing makeup and had her hair done, dressed in clothes that looked new and definitely more expensive than what she usually wore. She told me her boyfriend and his kids would be coming over for dinner the next day, Christmas Eve. For the big introduction, said she wanted us to have a night just the two of us first to catch up. We ordered pizza and watched some movies, like we used to when I was a kid. It was actually nice. She asked about my job and apartment, and seemed genuinely interested in my life. I started thinking maybe she'd finally moved on from the stress and struggle of the years after my dad died. How wrong I was. The next morning, I helped her clean up and prepare for dinner. She seemed nervous, changing outfits twice and checking the food constantly. Told me her boyfriend was someone important in the community, and she really wanted this to go well. I assured her it would be fine, that I was just happy she was happy. Around 4 p.m. she got a text that they were on their way. That's when she did something weird. She handed me a blindfold and asked me to put it on. It's a surprise. Please, it'll be fun, she said, too excited. Even though I thought it was dumb, I played along. So, I put the blindfold on and let her lead me to the living room. I heard the front door open, voices in the hallway, my mom's hands on my shoulders squeezing slightly. Ready? She asked, and I nodded. She removed the blindfold, and for a second, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. Standing there in my living room was Jacob, my high school tormentor, looking smug as hell, next to a younger kid who had to be his brother. And there was his father, Dr. Miller, with his arm around my mom's waist, like they'd been together forever. My stomach dropped to the floor. The gift bags I was holding fell from my hands. Jacob had this smirk on his face, that same exact smirk I'd seen 1,000 times before he'd say something designed to cut me down. Surprise, bro, he said. Guess we're family now. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. It was like someone had dumped ice water over my head while simultaneously punching me in the gut. For a moment, it felt like the ghost of the past haunted me again. I stumbled backward, then turned and bolted upstairs to my old room, locking the door behind me. I could hear my mom calling after me. I sat on my childhood bed, trying to make sense of what was happening. This had to be a mistake or a sick joke. There was no way my mom was dating Jacob's dad. No possible way she would do that to me. Seeing him again made me sick to my stomach. She knocked on the door a few minutes later, angry now, saying I was being dramatic and ruining Christmas, that I needed to come downstairs and be civil. When I didn't answer, she started getting louder, threatening to take away my key if I didn't open the door. So I did. She came in, sat down next to me on the bed, like we were about to have some normal conversation about curfew or homework, instead of whatever this was. "I know this is a surprise," she started, her voice calm. "But Richard is very important to me, and I need you to be supportive." "Richard?" I repeated. "You mean Dr. Miller, Jacob's dad? The father of the guy who made my life hell for 4 years?" She sighed, like I was being difficult on purpose, told me that was all high school drama, that we're adults now, that we should just move past it. Move past it? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jacob tormented me every day. I told her about it constantly, and she's dating his dad? I asked her how long this had been going on. She hesitated to tell, but when she finally admitted, what she said made everything even worse. 7 years, she finally said, still not looking at me. "Since your freshman year of high school." The room started spinning. 7 years. The entire time Jacob was bullying me, the entire time I was coming home devastated, and she was telling me to toughen up? Now I see why she kept ignoring what I was going through. She'd been dating my bully's father the entire time. "It wasn't the right time to tell you," she continued, like she was explaining why she hadn't mentioned getting a haircut. "You were dealing with your father's death, and I didn't want to confuse you with a new relationship." 7 years isn't a new relationship, I shot back. It's a double life. Dr. Miller appeared in the doorway then. "Your mother and I wanted to wait until you were mature enough to understand adult relationships," he said. That's when I noticed the familiar watch on his wrist, the same style my mom had given me for my high school graduation, claiming she'd saved up for months to afford it. Seeing it now on his wrist made something click in my brain. "You knew," I said, looking directly at my mom. "You knew what Jacob was doing to me at school." She shrugged, this dismissive gesture that made my blood boil. "Boys will be boys. Jacob was just being competitive." That's when Jacob appeared behind his father, leaning against the doorframe with that same smug look I remembered so well. I grabbed my phone and wallet from the nightstand. "I'm leaving now. Don't be ridiculous," my mom said. "It's Christmas Eve. Where will you go?" "Anywhere but here." Dr. Miller stepped forward, hand out like he was trying to calm an irrational patient. "Listen, son. Don't you dare call me son. I'm not your son," I snapped. "And I'm not staying in this house another minute." My mom's face changed then. "If you leave now, don't expect me to fund your student loan payments. That money your father left? I'm still the trustee until you're 25. Keep it," I said. "I'd rather be broke than part of this sick family fantasy you've created." "Screw all of you." I pushed past them and walked out, ignoring my mom's threats about how I'd regret this and how ungrateful I was being. I got in my car and drove to the only motel in town, checking in with what cash I had. Spent Christmas Eve alone in a musty room, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened to my life. Thanks to Mom. The next morning, Christmas Day, my phone blew up with texts from my mom. First angry, then manipulative, then trying to make me feel guilty. I turned it off and ignored all her calls. She played a role in destroying my teenage life, and I wasn't going to let that slide. I needed to understand how this could have happened without me knowing. I scrolled through my phone contacts, looking for someone, anyone, from my old life who might have answers. Then I stopped at one name, Danny, the only guy who didn't bully me back then. He was the first to call because I remembered he was the type of guy who knew all the town stories through his gossiping mom. So, I called him, half expecting he wouldn't pick up. I was surprised when he did. We started with the usual long time, no talk, but then when I got to the point, man, he seemed genuinely concerned. When I told him, he said, "Dude, I can't believe you just found out about your mom and Dr. Miller. That's seriously messed up." "Wait," I said, suddenly alert. "What do you mean you knew?" There was an awkward pause. Man, everyone knew. They weren't exactly subtle about it. We all thought you knew too, just didn't want to talk about it. And that's when the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. The entire town had known my mom was dating Jacob's dad. Everyone except me. I spent the next hour on the phone with Danny, learning just how deep this betrayal went. Apparently, my mom and Dr. Miller had been the talk of the town for years. They worked at the same medical center, him as one of the senior doctors, her as a receptionist in his department. Everyone saw them together all the time, lunch breaks, leaving work together. They weren't even trying that hard to hide it, Danny explained, like they wouldn't make out in public or anything, but anyone with eyes could see what was going on. I asked him why no one ever told me, and his answer made me feel even worse. We all thought you knew, man. It seemed impossible that you wouldn't know. Plus, it was Jacob's dad. Nobody wanted to get on his bad side by being the one to tell you. The more Danny talked, the clearer the picture became. Dr. Miller had been married that whole time. He'd only left his wife a few months ago when she finally caught him cheating. But the worst part came when Danny told me about Jacob. Apparently, Jacob used to brag to his friends about how his dad would help cover for him when he bullied me. Remember when you got suspended for fighting back that time? Jacob told everyone his dad threatened to pull some big donation to the school if they punished him too. Danny then apologized, saying he'd offer me a place, but he lived with his parents. By the time I hung up, I felt sick. All those years, every time I came home devastated by another of Jacob's attacks, Mom was probably texting her boyfriend about their next date. I spent another day in that motel room, barely eating, just trying to process everything. Then I got a text from another old classmate, Megan. Danny must have told her. She was his friend. She'd heard what was going on and offered me her spare room for a few days until I figured out my next move. I was surprised. None wanted to help me back then, but now suddenly people are interested. But I accepted gratefully anyway. The motel was draining what little cash I had. At Megan's apartment, more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. She worked at the same medical center, in the billing department, and had seen firsthand how my mom and Dr. Miller operated. Your mom became like the gatekeeper to his office, Megan explained over microwave dinners at her tiny kitchen table. Anyone who wanted to see Dr. Miller had to go through her first. She got special treatment from everyone because they all knew she was his girlfriend. Megan's roommate, who taught at the local elementary school, chimed in with her own info. Dr. Miller donates a ton of money to all the schools in the district. That's why nobody ever did anything about Jacob's bullying. The administration didn't want to risk losing those donations. I called my boss and explained the situation in vague terms: family emergency, needed to work remotely for a few weeks. She was understanding and agreed. Once that was sorted, I started planning my next move. I wasn't just going to slink away and lick my wounds this time. First, I needed evidence. After some thinking, I remembered my mom wasn't exactly tech-savvy. She'd been using the same email I created for her for about a decade. So, I tried to log into her email from my laptop, used the password I set for her, her initial and her birth date, and it was the same, LOL. Then I spent like an hour digging. Finally, I found the bomb. 7 years of emails between my mom and Dr. Miller, documenting not just their affair but explicit discussions about Jacob's behavior toward me. Jay was particularly hard on your son today. One email from early in my sophomore year read, maybe talk to him about toning it down before someone notices. My mom's response, I've told him to toughen up. Besides, it would look suspicious if I suddenly started complaining about Jacob after all this time. There were financial records too. Transfers from Dr. Miller to my mom's personal account while I wore secondhand clothes and skipped school trips because we couldn't afford them. Receipts for vacations they'd taken while I was at those summer academic camps for underprivileged youth that my mom had insisted I attend. Turns out, they were just getting me out of the way so they could spend time together. The most damning email was from my junior year, after a particularly bad incident, where Jacob had deleted a major project from my computer in the school lab. I'd come home in tears, begging my mom to talk to the school. My son was very upset today about the computer incident, she wrote to Dr. Miller. I convinced him it was his fault for not backing up his work. He wanted me to talk to the school, but I told him we can't afford to make waves. But please, can you talk to Jay and tell him to stop? I downloaded everything I could find, hundreds of emails, financial records, everything. Then I went nuclear. I compiled the most damning evidence into 3 separate files. One went to my lawyer. Yeah, I got a lawyer. Megan helped me find a guy who specialized in family cases and emotional distress suits. After hearing my story and seeing the evidence, he took the case on contingency, meaning I'd only pay if we won. The second file went to Dr. Miller's ex-wife. Danny had given me her email, saying she'd be very interested in any evidence that the affair had been going on longer than Dr. Miller had admitted in their divorce proceedings. Turns out, he'd claimed it had only started after their marriage was already failing about a year ago. The third file went to the hospital board where both my mom and Dr. Miller worked. Megan had mentioned that workplace relationships were supposed to be disclosed, especially between supervisors and subordinates. Dr. Miller's position as head of his department while dating a receptionist, who reported to him, violated several hospital policies. When my mom got the initial lawsuit papers, she called immediately, her voice shaking with rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she hissed. "After everything I've done for you, done for me?" "Yeah, sure," I laughed bitterly. "Like watching me get tormented for 4 years and doing nothing? Or lying to me about being poor while your boyfriend gave you money? Or maybe you mean lying to me for 7 years about dating my bully's father? You had no right to access my private emails," she said, her voice deadly quiet. "And you had no right to watch me suffer for years while helping cover it up. Everyone's going to know what you two did," I said before hanging up. Within days the dominoes started falling. The hospital board opened an ethics investigation into both my mom and Dr. Miller. Apparently, failing to disclose their relationship for 7 years while he supervised her was a serious violation. Even worse, there were emails showing he'd approved raises and schedule preferences for her that he denied to other staff. Dr. Miller's ex-wife's lawyer reached out to thank me for the information. The evidence I'd provided was helping her reopen their divorce settlement based on his dishonesty about the timeline of the affair. My mom and Dr. Miller tried damage control, posting on social media about their beautiful relationship and how I was just a troubled son trying to extort money from them. But their post backfired when people from my high school started commenting with their own memories of Jacob's bullying and my mom's strange indifference. Even Jacob's younger brother reached out to me privately on social media. "I believe you. They do the same thing to me now, make me feel crazy for seeing what's right in front of me." By the end of January, my mom and Dr. Miller had deactivated their social media accounts. The hospital placed them both on administrative leave pending the outcome of their investigation. Jacob's dad's medical license was under review by the state board, and my lawyer was compiling evidence from dozens of former classmates and teachers who'd witnessed the bullying and the cover-up. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had power over my own story. I wasn't just reacting to what Jacob or my mom did to me, I was taking control, and it felt pretty damn good. But this was just the beginning. The real revenge was still to come as my lawyer prepared for the court date that would finally bring everything into the open. My mom and Dr. Miller had no idea what was about to hit them. February rolled around, and things were moving faster than I expected. My lawyer was aggressive. "We've got them cornered." They'd hired a badass lawyer who was apparently some hotshot who specialized in getting rich people out of trouble, but even their lawyer was struggling with this one. The evidence was too solid, too extensive. Every time they'd try to dismiss one part of our case, we'd counter with 3 more examples. They tried painting me as a vindictive son trying to extort money. We countered with testimonies from teachers and classmates about the systematic bullying I'd endured. While all this legal stuff was happening, my mom and Dr. Miller were dealing with the fallout in other areas of their lives. The hospital ethics investigation wasn't going well for them. Even Jacob was feeling the heat. Several of his old victims had been emboldened by my lawsuit and started sharing their own stories. Turns out, I wasn't the only one he targeted, just the one he'd focused on the most. His college was reviewing complaints about his behavior there, and his part-time job at his dad's friend's law firm suddenly disappeared from his social media profiles. Through all this, I kept working remotely from Megan's place. Her roommate's boyfriend helped me set up a secure workstation so I could do my IT job without worrying about my mom or Jacob trying to mess with my connection. My boss remained surprisingly supportive. "Whatever's going on with your family, don't let it derail your career," she told me during a video call. "Your work speaks for itself." By mid-February, Dr. Miller's lawyer reached out to discuss a settlement, $50,000 if I would drop the case and sign an NDA. My lawyer laughed when he told me about it. Said they're testing the waters and seeing if I'll take quick cash over justice. I didn't even have to think about it. Tell them to shove their NDA. The next offer came directly from my mom. She showed up at Megan's apartment one afternoon when she knew I'd be working there alone. I almost didn't answer the door, but I wanted to see her squirm. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual. "Just us? No lawyers?" I stared her dead in the eyes. She started getting nervous, then said, "You could come home. Your room is still there." "That's not my home anymore," I replied. "Hasn't been for a long time apparently. Look, this has gone far enough. Richard is willing to pay your student loans plus enough for a down payment on your own place. All you have to do is drop this lawsuit." And that's when I realized she still didn't get it. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was just sorry she got caught. She still thought this was something that could be fixed with money. "Get out," I said quietly. "We'll talk through our lawyers." Her face hardened, the mask of concerned mother completely gone now. "You're making a huge mistake. Richard still has connections, even with this investigation going on. He can make sure you never work in this state again." "Is that a threat?" "Because I'm recording this conversation." I wasn't actually recording, but she didn't know that. The look of panic on her face was worth the lie. She left without another word, slamming the door behind her. 10 minutes later, my lawyer called to say they'd received another settlement offer, $100,000 plus a written apology. LOL, they're getting real desperate. The hospital board is meeting tomorrow to discuss termination for both of them, and Dr. Miller's ex-wife's case is gaining traction. What do you want to do? I thought about it for a minute. What happens if we go to court? Based on the evidence and witness statements we've compiled, I'd say we have an 85% chance of winning, and the judgment could be substantially higher than what they're offering. Plus, everything becomes public record. Then we go to court, I decided. The court date was set. As it approached, my mom made one last attempt at manipulation. She sent Jacob's younger brother, Alex, to talk to me. He showed up at Megan's apartment, looking uncomfortable, clearly sent against his will. I felt bad for the kid. He was just a pawn in their game, same as I had been. "It's not your responsibility to fix their mistakes," I told him. We ended up talking for an hour. Turned out, Alex had his own stories about Jacob's bullying and his dad's indifference. Dr. Miller had always favored Jacob, looking the other way when he mistreated his younger brother. Before he left, he told me, "I'll be rooting for you in court." Court day, I woke up at 5 a.m., after maybe 2 hours of sleep. Megan made coffee and drove me to the courthouse. The parking lot was packed. Felt like half the town had shown up to watch. Our case was simple. My mother had knowingly allowed and helped cover up years of abuse from Jacob while secretly dating his father. She had received financial benefits from Dr. Miller while claiming poverty to me. They had both actively interfered with school disciplinary processes that would have protected me. Their defense was basically that I was exaggerating normal teenage conflicts, that their relationship wasn't that relevant to Jacob's behavior, and that I was only pursuing this case out of greed and vindictiveness. Then the evidence started flowing. My lawyer presented email after email, financial records, school incident reports that had mysteriously disappeared. I was surprised that even my physics teacher came to testify. He described in detail how he'd reported Jacob multiple times, only to be called into the principal's office and told to drop it because Dr. Miller is an important donor. My mom took the stand last, trying to appear sympathetic. She talked about the struggles of being a single mother, how she'd done her best with limited resources, but she fell apart under cross-examination when confronted with the evidence that she'd been receiving substantial financial support while telling me we couldn't afford basic necessities. The judge took 2 days to make his decision. Those 48 hours were the longest of my life. When we returned to court, the judge didn't mince words. "This court finds overwhelming evidence of deliberate harm, parental neglect, and institutional corruption," he began. "The defendants not only failed to protect a minor in their care but actively participated in covering up abuse for personal benefit." He awarded me $175,000 in damages, every penny. Dr. Miller had documented gifting my mom during my high school years, plus additional punitive damages. But the financial penalty wasn't the real victory. 2 days later, the hospital board concluded their investigation by terminating both my mom and Dr. Miller, citing ethical violations and misuse of hospital resources. Dr. Miller's ex-wife used our evidence to reopen their divorce settlement and won full custody of Alex, plus a substantially increased settlement that forced Dr. Miller to sell his vacation property. The school didn't escape consequences either. After the court documents became public, parents started asking questions. about why the administration had ignored years of documented bullying. The school board implemented a complete overhaul of their bullying policies, and 3 administrators, who had been directly involved in covering up Jacob's behavior, were placed on administrative leave. I used part of the settlement to pay off my student loans. The rest I put toward a down payment on a small house in the city where I worked. My mom tried reaching out a few times after the verdict, but I made it short by blocking her number. 3 months after the court case, life's finally starting to feel normal again. Moved into my new place last month. My company promoted me to senior tech support with a raise, probably because I didn't miss a single deadline despite all the legal crap. Got a message from Alex, Jacob's little brother, last week. He's living with his mom now and doing way better. Life's not perfect, but for the first time in forever, it's actually mine. And that's the story, Reddit. If you made it this far, you're a real one. Appreciate you sticking around. Stay ruthless. Edit 1. Wow, this blew up more than I expected. LOL. Thank you guys so much for the DMs and the kind words. Appreciate each one. Edit 2. For those asking about Jacob, yeah, he got his share of karma too. So, here's a quick update about him. His internship at his dad's buddy's law firm disappeared overnight. 3 girls from our high school came forward with stories about how he'd harassed them, and his college put him on probation. Edit 3. Some of you have asked if I'd ever consider reconciling with my mom. Short answer, no. Long answer, hell no. She can go to hell.